I never thought a simple receipt would be the thing that shattered my world. It was just sitting there on our kitchen counter, partially hidden under a stack of mail, but something about it caught my eye. Maybe it was the store name, Harrison and Sons Jewelers, or maybe it was the amount, $3,875. My name is Jenna, and up until that moment, I thought I had a pretty good handle on my life. I'm a third-grade teacher, married to my college sweetheart Ethan, and we had what I believed was an open, honest relationship. At least, that's what I kept telling myself as I stared at that receipt, dated just 3 days ago. "Hey, babe." Ethan called out as he walked through the front door. "Traffic was awful today. Did you start dinner?" I quickly slipped the receipt into my pocket. "Not yet. I just got home myself." My voice sounded strange, even to me. Parent-teacher conferences ran late. Ethan dropped his briefcase by the stairs and loosened his tie. He looked tired, but there was something else, a nervousness I'd never noticed before. "Oh yeah. How'd they go?" "Fine." I busied myself with pulling out pots and pans, trying to act normal while my mind raced. Our anniversary wasn't for months. My birthday had passed 2 weeks ago with just a card and dinner at our favorite Italian place. Actually, something interesting happened today. He was scrolling through his phone, barely looking up. One of my students' parents works at Harrison and Sons Jewelers. A complete lie, but I watched his reaction carefully. His thumb stopped moving on the screen for just a fraction of a second. She was telling me about some of their new pieces. "That's nice." He cleared his throat. "Listen, I might have to go out of town next weekend. Vanessa needs help with some financial paperwork for the house." Vanessa. His sister. The same sister who'd been borrowing money from him for years, despite her well-paying job. The same sister who always seemed to need Ethan's help at the most convenient times. Again. I tried to keep the edge out of my voice. "Didn't you just help her last month?" "She's going through a rough patch, Jen. You know how it is being a single mom." I turned to face him fully. "Do I? Because what I do know is that Chloe's father pays generous child support, and Vanessa makes 6 figures at her firm. Can we not do this right now?" Ethan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I used to find endearing. Now it just seemed like a tell. "I'm tired, and I've got a presentation tomorrow." I wanted to pull out the receipt. I wanted to demand answers. But something held me back. Maybe fear, maybe intuition. Instead, I watched him head upstairs to shower, leaving me alone with my thoughts and a growing knot in my stomach. Later that night, as Ethan slept beside me, I lay awake scrolling through our joint credit card statements. The jewelry store purchase wasn't there. He must have used his personal card, the one he'd insisted on keeping separate for work expenses. My phone buzzed with a text from Susan, my mother-in-law. "Lunch tomorrow? Need to talk." Something in her message made my heart race. Susan had always been more of a mother to me than my own, and she had an uncanny ability to sense when things weren't right. I typed back a quick yes and set my phone down, turning to study my husband's sleeping face. After 10 years together, I thought I knew every line, every expression. But now, in the dim light from the street lamp outside, he looked like a stranger. Tomorrow I'd have lunch with Susan. Tomorrow I'd start asking questions. But tonight, I lay in the dark, clutching a jewelry store receipt for a gift I never received, wondering just how many other secrets were hiding in plain sight. Susan chose a quiet corner table at Riverside Cafe, far from the lunch crowd. I could tell by her expression that this wasn't going to be a casual catch-up. She hadn't even touched her tea. "I saw Vanessa yesterday," she said, folding and unfolding her napkin. She was wearing a beautiful sapphire pendant. "Brand new," she said. My stomach dropped. Sapphire. Ethan knew they were my favorite. "That's interesting." I took a sip of water, trying to steady my voice. "Did she mention where she got it?" Susan's eyes met mine. "Jenna, honey, I think you already know." Before I could respond, the cafe door chimed. Vanessa walked in, designer handbag swinging, Chloe trailing behind her. My niece's face lit up when she saw us. "Aunt Jenna." Chloe rushed over for a hug, and I held her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of strawberry shampoo. "What a coincidence," Vanessa said, though her tone suggested it was anything but. The sapphire pendant gleamed at her throat. "Mind if we join you?" Susan shot me an apologetic look. I forced a smile, shifting to make room for Chloe beside me. Vanessa pulled up a chair, arranging herself like she was posing for a photo shoot. "We were just discussing career options for Chloe," Vanessa announced. "I told her she could be anything she wants. Doctor, lawyer, CEO." She paused, her smile sharp. though some people are content with simpler paths. I felt Chloe tense beside me. I want to be a teacher like Aunt Jenna, she said quietly. Vanessa's smile tightened. Sweetie, you're so bright. You could do so much more. Actually, Susan cut in. Jenna just got nominated for Teacher of the Year. Third time, isn't it? How nice, Vanessa said, examining her manicure. Though I suppose with a teacher's salary, you and Ethan must struggle sometimes. It's so important to be financially secure these days. The sapphire caught the light as she moved, and something inside me snapped. We manage just fine, though some people seem to need constant financial assistance, despite their six-figure incomes. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. What exactly are you implying? Mom, Chloe interrupted. Can I get a cookie? Not now, sweetie. Vanessa leaned forward. I'd love to hear what Jenna means. Susan cleared her throat. Girls. I said, my heart pounding, that it must be nice having a brother who's always there to bail you out. Who buys you expensive jewelry while telling his wife we need to cut back on expenses. The color drained from Vanessa's face. You don't know what you're talking about. The receipt says otherwise. Chloe looked between us, confusion and worry crossing her face. I immediately regretted letting my anger show. Chloe, why don't we go get that cookie? Susan stood, holding out her hand. After a moment's hesitation, Chloe followed her to the counter. Vanessa waited until they were out of earshot. Listen carefully, she hissed. What happens between me and my brother is none of your business. Ethan understands family loyalty, even if you don't. Loyalty? Is that what you call manipulating him? You really don't get it, do you? She touched the pendant. Ethan knows who his real family is. Always has, always will. Don't make him choose, Jenna. You won't like the outcome. My phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. Where are you? Thought we were having lunch together. I'd completely forgotten our plans. Another buzz. Never mind. Having lunch with Vanessa to discuss the house situation. Vanessa smirked at her own phone. Duty calls. Come on, Chloe. As they left, Susan returned to the table. She reached across and squeezed my hand. There's something you need to know about Vanessa, she said quietly. Something that happened years ago, before you and Ethan met. But before she could continue, my phone rang. It was the school principal. An emergency staff meeting had been called. Tomorrow, Susan promised as I gathered my things. Come to my house. There's more to this than you know. I nodded, watching Vanessa's car pull away, the weight of unspoken secrets pressing down like storm clouds gathering overhead. Whatever Susan knew, whatever was really going on with Ethan and Vanessa, I had a feeling this was just the beginning. The business card in my hand read, Sam Hargrove Investigations, in simple black text. No fancy logo, no promises of discretion or excellence, just a name, number, and address. Susan had slipped it to me after telling me about Vanessa's history, about the mysterious fire at their father's business right before the insurance payout, about the string of convenient accidents that always seemed to benefit her. I sat in my car outside Sam's office for 20 minutes before working up the courage to go in. The reality of hiring a private investigator to look into my own husband felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. Mrs. Carlyle? Sam was nothing like the noir detective I'd imagined. He wore khakis and a polo shirt, and his office looked more like an accountant's than a PI's. What can I help you with? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Chloe. Aunt Jenna, Mom's crying again. She says we might have to move. I need you to look into some financial transactions, I said, pulling out copies of bank statements I'd gathered. And I need to understand what's happening to my niece's college fund. Sam's eyebrows rose as he flipped through the papers. These are significant transfers. All to the same account. My sister-in-law's. But Chloe's college fund is supposed to be untouchable. Their father set it up in the divorce agreement. Yet here it is, being drained through a series of small withdrawals. He tapped his computer keyboard. Does your husband have access to these accounts? He's the trustee. My voice cracked. But he wouldn't. He couldn't. Another text from Chloe. Mom says Uncle Ethan promised to help. What's happening? Sam looked up from his screen. Mrs. Carlyle, these patterns suggest something systematic. Someone's been very careful about staying just under certain reporting thresholds. My phone rang. Ethan. I let it go to voicemail. How long will it take to trace everything? I asked. A few days for the preliminary report. But Sam hesitated. You should know that once we start digging, we might find things you're not prepared for. I thought about Chloe's texts, about Vanessa's smirk in the cafe, about the sapphire pendant that should have been mine. I'm already not prepared for any of this. Later that evening, I found Chloe sitting on our front porch. She'd obviously walked the 3 blocks from her house alone. Mom and Uncle Ethan are fighting, she said as I sat beside her. About money again. And about you. I wrapped an arm around her shoulders. What about me? Mom says you're trying to come between them. That you don't understand about family. She looked up at me, her eyes too serious for a 9-year-old. But your family too, right? Before I could answer, a car screeched to a halt in front of our house. Vanessa jumped out, fury radiating from every movement. Chloe, get in the car right now. Vanessa, she's upset. Let her. Stay out of this. Vanessa grabbed Chloe's arm. You've done enough damage. Ethan may be too blind to see what you're doing, but I'm not. What I'm doing? I stood up. I'm not the one draining my daughter's college fund. Vanessa froze. Behind her, another car pulled up, Ethan's. What's going on? He demanded, looking between us. Ask your sister about Chloe's college fund, I said. Ask her about all the money she's been taking. Don't you dare, Vanessa hissed. Ethan, she's having me investigated. Your own wife. Ethan's face went pale. Jenna, is this true? In that moment, watching him look at me with shock and betrayal, I realized something crucial. He already knew. He'd known all along. Get in the car, Chloe, Vanessa said quietly, triumphantly. Your aunt and uncle need to talk. As they drove away, Ethan and I stood in the growing darkness, the weight of unspoken truths hanging between us like a storm about to break. My phone buzzed one last time, a text from Sam. Found something. You need to see this now. Sam's office felt colder at night. He spread photographs across his desk. Surveillance shots of Ethan and Vanessa outside various banks, coffee shops, restaurants. But it was the documents beside them that made my hands shake. These are transfer records from offshore accounts, Sam explained. Your husband's been moving money through shell companies for years. But here's where it gets interesting. He pointed to a highlighted section. These transactions started right after your father-in-law's death. The insurance money, I whispered. Vanessa said it barely covered the debts. There was no debt. Sam's voice was gentle. The business was profitable. The insurance payout was substantial. And most of it disappeared within months. My phone buzzed. Ethan again. 17 missed calls now. But why would they? I stopped, remembering something Susan had said about the fire. About Vanessa being the last one in the building that night. Oh God. There's more. Sam pulled out another document. Your niece's college fund? It's being used as collateral for loans. High-risk investments. All channeled through companies registered to Vanessa. A knock at the office door made us both jump. Through the frosted glass, I recognized Susan's silhouette. I followed you, she said when I let her in. After what happened with Chloe, I knew you'd be here. She looked at the scattered evidence. You found it, didn't you? The truth about the fire. Mrs. Carlyle, Sam started, but Susan cut him off. I've kept quiet for too long. She picked up one of the photos. Ethan and Vanessa outside Harrison and Sons Jewelers. My husband wasn't supposed to be there that night. Vanessa convinced him to come in late, to check the books. She'd been telling him for months that money was missing. My phone buzzed again. A text from Chloe, Mom's packing bags. She says we're going to Grandma's house in Florida. She's running, I realized. She knows we're close to the truth. Not without Chloe. I grabbed my coat. Susan, I need you too. The office door burst open. Ethan stood there, tie loose, eyes wild. Jenna, please. Whatever you think you know. Your father died in that fire, I said quietly. And you helped cover it up. I didn't know. His voice cracked. Not at first. Vanessa said it was an accident, that she'd lose Chloe if anyone investigated too closely. She needed help moving the insurance money to protect herself. I just wanted to protect my sister. And now, I gestured at the evidence. What about protecting Chloe's future? Her college fund. I can fix this. He stepped toward me. We'll get the money back. Set up new accounts. Like you fixed it 10 years ago? Susan's voice was steel. My husband is dead, Ethan. Your father. And you chose to protect his killer. My phone lit up with another text from Chloe. Aunt Jenna, I'm scared. Mom's acting weird. Please come get me. Ethan saw the message. Something shifted in his face. Realization, horror, resolve. She's at the house? For now. I grabbed Sam's card. But she's planning to run tonight. No. Ethan straightened his tie, a gesture so familiar it hurt. Not this time. I'm done choosing the wrong side. Mrs. Carlyle, Sam interrupted, holding up another document. These recent transfers, they're not just about hiding money anymore. They're liquidating everything. If your sister-in-law leaves the country with these funds, she won't. I headed for the door, Ethan and Susan behind me. Because this time, she'll have to go through all of us. Outside, storm clouds gathered over the city. My phone buzzed one final time, a text from Vanessa. You want the truth, little sister? Come alone. 1 hour. You know where. I showed the message to Ethan. His face went pale. The old factory, he whispered. Where it all started. The first drops of rain hit the pavement as we rushed to our cars, each of us knowing that tonight would end where it began, in fire and truth. Injustice long delayed. The old factory loomed against the stormy sky, its broken windows like dead eyes staring down at us. Ethan grabbed my arm before I could head inside. Let me go first, he said. I know how Vanessa thinks. That's exactly why you're staying here. I pulled away, remembering all his past choices. Call the police. Tell them everything. But Chloe needs someone she trusts right now, not someone who's been lying to her. Lightning illuminated the factory skeleton, and for a moment, I saw the ghost of what it had been. Before the fire, before the lies. Before everything fell apart. Inside, my footsteps echoed on concrete. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness, and the air smelled of rust and old memories. My phone's flashlight caught movement ahead. Chloe, huddled in a corner, tear tracks on her face. Aunt Jenna. She started to run toward me, but Vanessa stepped out of the shadows. Stay where you are, sweetie. The sapphire pendant gleamed at her throat. Your aunt and I need to talk first. Where are the bags, Vanessa? The ones you packed for Florida. She laughed, but it wasn't the confident sound from the cafe. You think you've figured it all out, don't you? The devoted sister-in-law, protecting everyone from big bad Vanessa. I know about the fire. My voice echoed off the walls. About what really happened to your father. What happened? Chloe's voice trembled. Mom. Vanessa's face hardened. What happened is that some people don't deserve what they have. My father was going to sell the business. Did you know that? Leave nothing for his children except his precious moral legacy. So you killed him for money? I created an opportunity. Her voice rose, bouncing off the walls. And Ethan understood. He helped me protect what was ours. But you, she stepped closer. You had to start digging. Had to play the hero. A crash from above made us both jump. Footsteps on metal stairs. That'll be your backup? Vanessa smiled. But I have something better. She pulled out her phone, showing me the screen. A transfer confirmation. One button, and everything, the college fund, the insurance money, all of it, disappears into accounts you'll never trace. Mom, please. Chloe stood up. I don't want to go to Florida. I want to stay here with Aunt Jenna and Uncle Ethan. This isn't about what you want. Vanessa snapped. This is about what we deserve. More footsteps above, closer now. Vanessa's finger hovered over her phone. You want to know what really happened that night? She was almost whispering now. Dad caught me changing the books. He said he was going to turn me in, that prison would teach me values. So I showed him what values are really worth in this world. By burning everything down, my hand found a piece of metal pipe, cold and heavy. By surviving. She jabbed at her phone screen. There. It's done. Good luck proving anything now. But I was smiling. Check your signal. Her face fell as she looked at her phone again. No bars. The factory's steel frame blocked everything. You're not the only one who can plan ahead, I said, pulling out my own phone. The recording bar blinked steadily. Tell me again about that night with your father? The footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs. Ethan emerged from the shadows, followed by Susan and 2 police officers. No, Vanessa whispered. Ethan, you can't. It's over, Vanessa. His voice cracked. I should have ended it 10 years ago. As the officers moved forward, Vanessa looked at each of us, her mother, her brother, her daughter. The sapphire pendant caught the light one last time before she reached up and ripped it from her neck, letting it clatter to the floor. You want to know something funny? She didn't resist as they cuffed her. That necklace? It's fake. Just like everything else in this family. Chloe ran to me, burying her face in my jacket. Above us, thunder rolled across the sky, and rain began to pour through the broken windows, washing away a decade of secrets and lies. The police station's fluorescent lights made everything look harsh and unreal. I sat across from Detective Martinez, watching her flip through Sam's files, the evidence we'd gathered, the recording from the factory. Chloe had fallen asleep on the bench outside, her head in Susan's lap. "Mrs. Carlyle," Martinez said, "we have enough to charge your sister-in-law with financial crimes. But murder?" She tapped the decade-old fire report. "That's going to be harder to prove," she confessed. "You heard the recording. A confession obtained under duress, in a hostile situation. Her lawyer's already moving to suppress it." Through the window, I could see Ethan in another room, his head in his hands. He hadn't looked at me since we'd left the factory. "There's something else." Martinez slid a new document across the table. "We found this in Vanessa's house. It's a contract signed by your husband last week, transferring your home into a trust controlled by Vanessa." The room tilted sideways. "That's not possible." "He wouldn't. It's his signature. Notarized." A knock at the door interrupted us. Sam entered, looking grim. "You need to see this." He placed his laptop on the table, playing security footage from Harrison and Sons Jewelers. There was Ethan, buying the sapphire pendant. And next to him, smiling, was a woman who wasn't Vanessa. "That's Claire Morgan," Martinez said. "Vanessa's lawyer. They've been working together for months, preparing for this." The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. The jewelry receipt I'd found wasn't for Vanessa at all. It was for Claire. Ethan hadn't just been helping his sister, he'd been planning to leave with someone else. "Mrs. Carlyle?" A uniformed officer appeared at the door. "Your niece is asking for you." In the hallway, Chloe looked small and lost under the harsh lights. "Is Mom going to jail?" Before I could answer, Claire Morgan strode in, her heels clicking on the linoleum. "Not if I can help it." She smiled at me, wearing a familiar sapphire pendant. "In fact, I have a proposition that might help everyone." Susan stood, placing herself between Claire and Chloe. "Haven't you people done enough?" "This isn't about us." Claire's smile never wavered. "It's about Chloe. Vanessa's willing to make a full confession about the financial crimes, return most of the money on one condition." She paused, letting the words hang. "Full custody of Chloe goes to Ethan and me." "You can't be serious." But I saw Ethan through the window, now standing watching us. "Think about it," Claire continued. "A fresh start for everyone. Chloe gets a stable home, away from all this ugliness. Vanessa serves a lighter sentence. And you." She gestured at the station around us. "You get to walk away knowing you did the right thing." "The right thing?" My voice shook. "Like burning down a building with someone inside? Like stealing a child's future." "Aunt Jenna." Chloe's hand found mine. "I don't want to go with them." Claire's smile hardened. "Unfortunately, that's not your decision. The custody papers are already drawn up. Ethan signed them this morning." Through the window, Ethan finally met my eyes. There was no remorse there, no conflict. Just emptiness. "You have until morning to decide," Claire said, turning to leave. "Either way, things change tomorrow." After she left, Susan pulled me aside. "There's one thing we haven't tried." She pressed a key into my hand. "Your father-in-law's old office at the house. There's a safe behind his portrait. I never told anyone, not even Ethan. What's in it? I don't know. But the night before the fire, he called me. Said he'd found something that would change everything." She squeezed my hand. "Be careful. If Vanessa finds out." I looked at Chloe, still watching us with worried eyes, then at Ethan through the window, now deep in conversation with Claire. The weight of the key felt like lead in my palm. "I'll go tonight," I whispered. "But first, I need you to take Chloe somewhere safe. Somewhere they won't look." Outside, thunder rolled across the sky again, like an echo from the factory. But this time, it felt less like an ending and more like a warning of what was still to come. The old Carlyle house stood dark against the night sky, but I knew we weren't alone. A car I didn't recognize sat in the shadows of the driveway, Claire's Mercedes. Of course they'd be here, searching for anything that could help their case. Sam's voice crackled through my earpiece. "Security systems disabled. But hurry, police can only delay processing Vanessa's confession for another hour." I used the garden key Susan had given me, slipping in through the back door. Voices drifted down from upstairs, Ethan and Claire, arguing about something. The home office was on the first floor, past the kitchen where I'd first found that jewelry receipt. It felt like a lifetime ago. The portrait of Richard Carlyle hung exactly where it had for decades, his stern eyes watching as I carefully lifted it from the wall. The safe was there, just as Susan had said. My hands shook as I entered the combination she'd given me. Richard's wedding anniversary. It's not here. Claire's voice grew closer. Your mother must have moved it. She doesn't know about the safe, Ethan replied. Keep looking. The safe clicked open just as footsteps reached the stairs. Inside lay a single USB drive and a sealed envelope addressed to Susan. I grabbed both, but as I turned to leave, the office light flicked on. I had a feeling you'd try something like this. Vanessa stood in the doorway, having somehow made bail. She looked different without the sapphire pendant. Smaller, desperate. Hand it over. How did you get out of jail? Money talks. And Claire walks. She stepped into the room. Did you really think I wouldn't have a backup plan? That I'd let you destroy everything I've built? More footsteps above. Down here. Vanessa called out. She's got it. I backed toward the window. Your father knew, didn't he? That's what's on this drive. What you really did with the company money before the fire. You don't understand. I had to protect us, protect Chloe. The company was failing. The company was fine. You were stealing from it. Give me the drive, Jenna. Ethan appeared behind Vanessa, Claire at his side. Please. We can still fix this. I pulled out my phone, holding it up. Sam? You getting all this? Loud and clear, his voice came through the speaker, along with the police officers outside. Vanessa lunged forward, but I was ready. Sidestepping her grab, I slammed the office door shut, catching Claire's arm as she reached for me. The USB drive fell, skittering across the floor. No. Vanessa dove for it, but another hand got there first. Susan stood in the connecting door to the library, drive in hand. Enough, Mom. Vanessa's voice cracked. How did you? I've been here all along, waiting to see what you'd choose. She held up the envelope. Your father wrote this the night he died. He knew what you were doing, Vanessa. But he loved you enough to give you a chance to confess. And now, Claire demanded. What's your plan? Turn them in? Destroy your own family. Family? Susan's laugh was bitter. Family doesn't kill each other for money. Family doesn't steal a child's future. She looked at Ethan. Family doesn't betray the people who love them. Red and blue lights suddenly flooded the room. Outside, police cars surrounded the house. It's over, I said quietly. The real confession isn't on that drive, Vanessa. It's been in your mother's hands all along. Understanding dawned in Vanessa's eyes as Susan pulled out a recorder, the same model their father had used in his office. The one that had been running the night of the fire. I'm sorry, Ethan whispered, but I couldn't tell who he was talking to. As the police entered, I watched the last pieces of the Carlyle family's facade crumble. But underneath the ruins, something else remained. Something built on truth rather than lies, on justice rather than revenge. Through the window, I saw Chloe step out of Sam's car, Detective Martinez at her side. She looked up at the house, not at her mother or Ethan, but at me. And in that moment, I knew that sometimes protecting family means being strong enough to break it apart first. 6 months later, I stood in my classroom, erasing the day's lessons from the whiteboard when I heard familiar footsteps in the doorway. Ready for the hearing tomorrow? Sam asked, leaning against the doorframe. I set down the eraser, as ready as anyone can be to watch their sister-in-law's sentencing. The past months had unfolded like scenes from someone else's life. Vanessa's trial for her father's murder. Ethan's plea deal for his role in the financial crimes. Claire's disbarment. Through it all, Chloe had shown a resilience that still amazed me. Aunt Jenna. Speaking of resilience, Chloe appeared behind Sam, wearing her backpack. Mom wants to see me before tomorrow. Will you come with me? The prison visiting room was cold and sterile, but Vanessa somehow still managed to look polished in her orange jumpsuit. The sapphire pendant was long gone, replaced by shadows under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide. You've grown, she said to Chloe. Are they treating you well at Susan's? Chloe nodded, her hand finding mine under the table. Grandma's teaching me to bake. And Aunt Jenna helps me with homework every day after school. I'm sorry, Vanessa said suddenly, the words seeming to surprise even her. Not for what I did. I thought I was protecting you, giving you the future you deserved. But I'm sorry for how I did it. That's not protection, Chloe replied, sounding older than her 9 years. That's just another lie. On our way out, we passed Ethan being let in for his own visit. He'd been released last week, after serving his shorter sentence. Our eyes met briefly, and I saw something there I hadn't expected. Not regret or shame, but understanding. He asked about you, Susan told me later that evening, as we sat on her porch watching Chloe play in the yard. About whether you'd consider. No. The answer came easily now. Some things can't be fixed. She handed me an envelope, the one from the safe, finally opened. Richard wrote this the night he died. He knew what Vanessa was planning, but he also knew something else. She paused. He knew about Chloe's real father. I looked at the letter, then at Chloe chasing fireflies in the growing dusk. Does she need to know? Maybe someday. But right now, Susan smiled. Right now she needs what she has. People who love her enough to tell her the truth, even when it hurts. The next morning, before heading to court, I found something in my mailbox. A small package wrapped in brown paper. Inside was the sapphire pendant, no longer gleaming quite so brightly, with a note in Ethan's handwriting. I bought this for you originally. Before everything went wrong. Before I forgot what really matters. It belongs to you, like the truth belonged to my father, and the future belongs to Chloe. I drove to the jewelry store instead of the courthouse. The owner recognized the pendant immediately. Beautiful piece, he said. Would you like to sell it? No. I placed it on the counter. I'd like to trade it for something else. A locket, maybe. Something a young girl might like to keep her memories in. That evening, after the sentencing was done and the reporters had gone home, Chloe and I sat on the porch swing at Susan's house. She turned the locket over in her hands, opening it to see the tiny pictures inside, her with me, with Susan, with her teachers and friends. Is this my family now? She asked. Family is complicated, I said, thinking of Vanessa in her cell, of Ethan trying to rebuild his life, of Susan keeping decades of secrets to protect those she loved. Sometimes it's not who you're born to, but who you choose to become. She leaned against me, the locket clutched tight. Above us, stars began appearing in the darkening sky, each one a tiny light pushing back against the darkness. Like truth against lies, like love against fear, like the endless choice between what's easy and what's right. Then I choose this, she whispered. I choose us. Sometimes I've learned the greatest revenge isn't in destroying what hurt you, but in building something better from the ruins. Something true. Something that lasts.